Hey, fantastic minds. Welcome back to our channel where we unravel complex tales and make them as easy as pie. Today, we're delving into the intricate world of international relations, uncovering how Russia is playing a strategic game to navigate through the challenges posed by those tough things called sanctions. It's a fascinating journey, so grab your thinking caps because we're about to embark on an intriguing exploration. So, what exactly are sanctions? Imagine you're a part of this big game called the world, and countries are players. When one country isn't happy with another, instead of shouting or fighting, they opt for a more diplomatic approach. It's like saying, hey, we're not playing together for a while. These diplomatic timeouts, known as sanctions, are restrictions imposed to show disapproval and encourage better behavior. It's a way for countries to express their dissatisfaction without resorting to more severe measures. But what happens when countries take this timeout? The impact can be significant. Just like when your friend stops sharing toys with you, it can be tough. For countries, it might mean they have to find new ways to get the toys they need or work on solving the issues that led to the timeout in the first place. It's a bit like a challenge that encourages everyone to step up their game and find better solutions. Now, let's dive deeper into this analogy. Think of the toys as resources, things like money, trade opportunities, or technology. When one country feels the other isn't playing fair or is upset about certain actions, they decide to limit the sharing of these resources. It's a bit like putting certain toys off limits until everyone agrees to follow the rules of the game. Russia occupies an unusual position on the world stage. Under President Vladimir Putin, Moscow has repeatedly demonstrated that it has the capacity to destabilize the international order, most recently with its brutal invasion of Ukraine. But for all its ability to upend power dynamics in places like the Middle East and now Europe, Moscow has so far not demonstrated the capacity to fill the vacuums it exploits or creates. That is most visibly on display in Ukraine, where the Russian military has proven operationally incompetent at anything but imposing punishing costs on the country's civilian population, including alleged war crimes. But while Russia has now proven that it lacks the military strength to challenge US supremacy in Europe, let alone globally, no one, particularly not the NATO alliance, is ignoring its nuclear capabilities, as evidenced by the alliance's refusal to intervene directly in the war in Ukraine. Moscow also uses arms sales and military engagements to build ties to countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and especially the Middle East. And until Europe dramatically reduced its dependence on Russian energy supplies, its massive exports of fossil fuels to Europe offered Moscow additional leverage. Even as Moscow maintains an outsized influence on the global stage, Putin has had some setbacks on the home front. Though he has dominated the Russian political scene for more than 2 decades, his popularity had waned amid a slowing economy even before the war in Ukraine, particularly following a deeply unpopular pension reform effort in 2018. That didn't stop him from engineering a way to hold on to power after his current presidential term ends in 2024. Despite a constitutional term limit, the recent short-lived rebellion by Yevgeny Prigozhin and his Wagner Group, a private military company that has been a useful asset for the Kremlin in the Middle East, Africa, and Ukraine, raised questions about the stability of Putin's regime and demonstrated how the warring factions within it could lead to chaos once Putin eventually leaves office. But the aftermath of the mutiny, including Prigozhin's untimely death in an airplane accident, has demonstrated that Putin's grip on power remains solid. The Russian Republic, due to its vast size and rich natural resources, played a key role in the Soviet Union's economy. Initially, these resources fueled significant economic advancements, including the rapid growth of mining, metallurgy, and heavy engineering. as well as the expansion of the railway network and a substantial increase in energy supply. In the 1960s, a second phase of industrial development had a profound impact on the Russian Republic. This period witnessed further growth in established industries, especially in oil, gas, electricity, and chemicals, along with a diversification in industrial output, including a limited expansion in consumer goods. However, as the Soviet Union approached dissolution, the Russian economy, like the entire country, experienced a decline, with official statistics masking industrial inefficiencies. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia underwent radical reforms to transition from a centrally planned economy to one based on capitalist principles. Reforms included establishing privately owned ventures, both foreign and Russian invested, and privatizing state-owned enterprises. Vouchers were issued to citizens to facilitate privatization, but the process was slow, and many firms, especially in heavy industries, remained state-owned. The privatization process faced challenges, and debates on land buying and selling persisted. In 2001, the government legalized land sales for urban housing and industrial real estate. Full private ownership of land, as provided in the 1993 Constitution, was still pending implementation, and structural reforms faced delays. The post-Soviet years brought hardships for Russians, with the economy contracting significantly. Inflation, a devalued currency, and falling real incomes were among the challenges. Recovery efforts were disrupted by a severe financial crisis in 1998, leading to a sharp ruble devaluation and loss of life savings for many. Corrective measures were gradually implemented, including more rigorous bank licensing, crackdowns on tax evasion, tax moderation for small enterprises, and incentives for reinvesting profits. By the early 21st century, these measures showed positive effects, contributing to a recovering and stable Russian economy. Foreign direct investment faced obstacles, including state intervention, corruption, and weak rule of law. Organized crime and state ownership in various industries further discouraged investments. Environmental degradation, a legacy from the Soviet era, added to the challenges. Despite these obstacles, Russia's economic foundation remained similar to the Soviet period, and by the early 21st century, the country showed signs of recovery and stable growth, driven in part by steady earnings from oil exports. Russia isn't just solving puzzles at home, they're expanding their social circle on the global stage. We'll explore how they're cultivating relationships with countries willing to engage in mutually beneficial trade and partnerships. It's a bit like attending a worldwide networking event, connecting with others who share common interests and goals. Coordinated multilateral sanctions target more than 4,800 Russian entities and individuals, but financial facilitators around the world are enabling Russia's sanctions, evasion, and circumvention efforts. In response, the United States and the Group of Seven, G7 allies are intensifying efforts to target the enablers and have issued advisories describing the types of evasion, including, but not limited to, firstly, using family members and close associates to ensure continued access and control of assets. Secondly, using real estate to hold value. Thirdly, using complex ownership structures to avoid detection. And lastly, transferring assets and funds to countries that have not sanctioned Russia. The sanctions targeted Russian President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, as well as Russian companies and several sectors of the Russian economy. In the following months, the sanctions regime against Russia was expanded with 8 more installments, hitting its most valuable exports to Europe, oil and gas, and curbing its access to products that could be used in its war on Ukraine. By the looks of it, the EU will continue to impose new sanctions, as Russian aggression and war crimes show no sign of abating. But despite the wide-ranging measures imposed and Brussels' commitment to uphold them, some observers are claiming that they have failed. The Russian economy appears more resilient than expected, and the Russian military retains the capacity to destroy civilian infrastructure and military targets and terrorize the Ukrainian population. What is more, sanctioned goods are still finding their way to Russia and to the battlefield in Ukraine. If the sanctions are not working the way they ought to, it is because we are actively undermining them. The analysis of customs data from 12 EU countries, Norway, the UK, the US, and Japan, reveals a staggering 8 billion euros in circumvented export sanctions on Russia in 2022. Germany emerges as the largest exporter of sanctioned goods to Russia, closely followed by Lithuania, together accounting for half of Western goods that Moscow is barred from accessing. European businesses, particularly German ones, exploit third countries to sell products to Russia, with nearly half of this parallel export flowing through Kazakhstan, and the remainder through nations like Georgia and Armenia. The sanctioned products encompass dual-use goods, including luxury items, cutting-edge technology, and machinery. Notably, exports of mid-sized trucks, crucial for war zones, dropped to zero for Russia, but sales to Armenia surged fivefold, revealing a circumvention pattern. Dual-use products like polyamides, crucial for military applications, made their way to Russia through Kazakhstan imports from Germany, showcasing the adaptability of sanctions evasion. Lithuania, despite its opposition to Belarusian President Lukashenko, seemingly increased vehicle exports to Belarus by tenfold, suggesting potential indirect routes for sanctioned goods to reach Russia. While some neighboring countries like Kazakhstan express reluctance to take sides in the conflict, it underscores the need for robust enforcement of sanctions by the countries imposing them, with the EU urged to establish new export regimes and ensure compliance. In response to these findings, it becomes imperative for the EU to institute effective measures, including new export regimes for dual-use and war-critical goods. The establishment of investigation task forces and rigorous enforcement through legal tools is crucial to curb sanctions evasion. Additionally, the business community is called upon to embrace a compliance culture and refrain from turning a blind eye to those evading sanctions. As the conflict in Ukraine intensifies, ensuring the thorough implementation of sanctions is not just a diplomatic necessity, but a critical step to prevent further loss of lives and uphold the collective commitment to defending freedom and peace in the region. And there you have it. Russia's journey against sanctions is a tale of strategic brilliance, resourcefulness, and global networking. In summary, our exploration ventured into the dynamic world of international relations and Russia's adept handling of sanctions. We likened sanctions to a diplomatic game, illustrating how countries take timeouts to express dissatisfaction and encourage better behavior by limiting the sharing of resources. Shifting focus to Russia's strategic brilliance, we acknowledged its limitations on the military front, but highlighted its adept use of nuclear capabilities, arms sales, and energy exports to maintain global influence. Despite internal challenges, President Vladimir Putin's political dominance endures, shaping Russia's resilience on the world stage.